What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have quite a bit to talk about in the world of volleyball. As there may not be any more volleyball as of this week, but NCAA men's volleyball season is on the horizon, as next week is the beginning of NCAA men's volleyball season in the 2024 season, as I will be previewing the Big West, the MPSF, the EIVA, and the MIVA, and its players to watch for, and the teams to watch out for, and its team's outlook. Also, we got a little bit of NCAA women's volleyball news, as there's some notable transfers, as that transfer portal is up and popping like a popcorn machine at the movies. Also, and finally, this is the last episode of 2023, as 2024 is next week, as I'll be reflecting on what Set Point has done and what's next for Set Point. So hand me a volleyball, set the net, because I'm about to serve up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IESR Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way to episode 226 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as formerly known as Twitter, X, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. We also have Facebook for those that still use it. All you have to do is type in the word IE Sports, then Radio in the search bar, and then like us, and then that's how you're able to follow us on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and it's a daily updated website for all of your latest sports news, our sports blog, our Hall of Fame, our Fans of the Month, our pages dedicated to each podcast, such as Set Point, and our community forum, as well as our merchandise shop. For the past 9 years, going on 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports teams around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. A huge shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on. All you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. In addition, if you follow Planet Jerky on Instagram at Planet Jerky, message them saying that you heard about them on one of IE Sports Radio shows, and then you'll be entered into a raffle to get not one, but 2 free bags of Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. A huge shout out to Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. In addition, orders of $50 or more are free, and for a limited time, prices are slashed. So get some Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky soon as possible. And the way you can follow Set Point on social media is on X at set_point IESR, and on Instagram at set_point IESR. And actually on X is at set_point IE. And I try to update it as best as I can, but without any further delay, let us begin. I gotta get that live link out there. But I hope everyone here had a great Christmas, and honestly, my Christmas was good. If you celebrated Christmas on Christmas Eve, merry belated Christmas to you too as well. If you don't celebrate Christmas, then happy Hanukkah or happy Kwanzaa or happy holidays in general. All right, now let's get started, as there's no volleyball going on as of right now outside of like maybe the pros. But let's talk a little NCAA men's volleyball, as next week begins the season, as I want to say Pepperdine kicks off its season on January 2nd. If not, January 3rd has Hawaii and Loyola facing off against one another. But more on that later. You'll get the whole preview of games for the week of. But for what I did, I decided to take the liberty of previewing each conference and pretty much printing out notables for each and every team from each and every conference. So, unfortunately, I'm going to limit it to only the Power 5 conferences just because I did it last year and it was still too long. So, I'm going to do the Power 5 conferences or the automatic qualifiers, which would be the MPSF, the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation Conference, the Big West Conference, the EIVA, and the MIVA. Unfortunately, Conference Carolinas did not release its preseason poll, so unfortunately I can't really preview that conference altogether. I can tell you that North Greenville and King is basically going to be the top dogs. King will be under a new head coach, as Ryan Booher has stepped away from the game, as reported by Off the Block, and their new coach is, I forgot his last name, but his first name is Marquet. So Marquet Clark. Marquet Clark is the new head coach at King University men's volleyball in Tennessee. So there's that little tidbit news right there. But jumping over to the conference previews. All right, strap on in as I prepare you for the NCAA men's volleyball scene. So we'll start off with the MIVA. So we'll start off with Queens. Their notable players, from my knowledge, are Matthew Pitch, junior outside hitter, Jack Brinkman, graduate outside hitter, Danielle Leitao, graduate setter, Matteo Faleri, sophomore outside hitter, who transferred from St. Francis, Brooklyn, and Nathan Valpel, sophomore middle blocker. Their key departures are Guillermo Jordan, libero/defensive specialist, and Brian Schwab, setter. So, my outlook for this year's team from Queens, and by the way, shout out to Jen B, who's in the live chat room on Spreaker. If you're listening live on Spreaker, definitely do drop your comments on which players you're looking out for in terms of the MIVA, the MPSF, the Big West, and the EIVA. Or you could just listen on in. It doesn't cost anything. It also doesn't cost anything to make a Spreaker account and just chat on the live Spreaker chat room. Respectfully, of course. But my outlook for Queens is that they're no longer in an independent. They're no longer independent. They're in an actual conference, which I think is pretty cool. They were slated to finish last in the MIVA, and they'll have to make a name for itself, and they'll have to play some ranked competition. They don't have any other ranked opponents against possible MIVA opponents, which would be against the likes of Ohio State, Loyola, maybe Ball State, those sort of opponents. And maybe they might be playing Princeton as a ranked opponent, but that all depends on what the ABCA wants to release as their coaches poll for the first week. And their question marks is, can they shake off the growing pains sooner rather than later, and will Leitao set or will he hit? As you've got other setters such as Brian Camacho, Caden Marin, Matt Colcolette, and last year Leitao had 224 kills last year. He's more than capable of playing setter, as he could also play the right side or left side. So for Queens, it's going to be a little bit of a long season just because they're a new team in the conference, but maybe they might be able to turn some heads. Next up in terms of the MIVA is Quincy. Quincy was chosen to finish 8th in the conference. Their notable returning players is Raj Aileen, junior opposite. He was all MIVA first team. And here's the thing about Quincy, and I got a bone to pick with them. Unfortunately, their roster, their 2024 roster, was not released, so I can't really gauge on which players have fully returned and which players are either transferred or departed or graduated, etc. So for the notable players, assuming they're still here, they will be consisting of AJ Godhere, junior outside hitter, Jonas Holzinger, junior setter, Roman, I'm going to butcher a lot of these names, Roman Derekir, senior middle blocker, Dominic Wegiel, junior libero, and Logan Gisecki, sophomore opposite / middle blocker. And their key departures, based on them being either seniors or graduate players from last year, Keegan Carey opposite and Eddie Jakubauskas, outside hitter. And my outlook for Quincy is I don't know what to really expect of this team. They have a lot of stiff competition in terms of the MIVA, though. And they're really going to have to give Raj Aileen a lot of support this year. If they don't give him the support, then he's going to suffer from what I call Tyler Mitchum syndrome, which was basically what he went through when it came to Lewis and how he had to practically carry the team more often than not. And here's the thing for Quincy. They're chosen to finish 8th in the conference, but how far can they really go? And this also kind of makes me wonder what's going to be the format of this year's conference tournament. Is it going to be 8 versus 9, and then the winner of that plays the top seed, kind of like the MLS Cup? Or is it going to be like 9 seed versus 6 seed, and then 7 seed versus 8 seed? It's going to... Adding a 9th team kind of is a little interesting, if you ask me. So for Quincy, I'll give them this. They're not the worst team in the conference, but them and Queens are going to be basically having their growing pains quite a bit. The good thing was for Quincy is that they did win a conference game last year against McKendree, which was big. It snapped a 40-plus conference game losing streak, which is huge right there. So the fact that Quincy finally managed to get a conference win is big time right there. Speaking of McKendree, that is who is chosen to finish 7th in the conference. Their notable returning players are Roland Lively, who is a sophomore middle blocker, all MIVA second team. And their other notable players are Bryce Wetjen, sophomore opposite, Kyle Wilson, graduate outside hitter, Kevin Shuley, junior outside hitter, Tyler Paulson, redshirt senior setter, De'Aaron McCraney, junior middle blocker, who also transferred from Central State. Their only key departure, to my knowledge, is Francisco Comas, the libero. And my outlook for McKendree is they will definitely win more than one conference match this season. I don't expect McKendree to have the season that they did last year. They obviously got off to a sluggish start, and then it obviously carried into conference play. However, you got to remember, they did pull off a big upset in the MIVA tournament, or the MIVA tournament, as you all like to call it somewhat, but I just call it MIVA. But McKendree upset Loyola, the 2 seed in the MIVA conference tournament, and that just goes to show that when it comes to conference tournaments, anything can happen. And McKendree is the prime example of regular season doesn't mean squat as long as you're able to get something done in the postseason. And they were able to win a MIVA conference tournament match, which I think is huge. And another question mark for them is, who takes over at libero, Jay Miller or Robbie Nardoni? And they're the only 2 liberos on the team, as they're a redshirt freshman and freshman on the team. And another question mark will be, does this team have enough to challenge the top dogs in the conference? And can they pull the McKendree magic like they did in last year's conference tournament? Those are my biggest question marks for McKendree. I think they have a really solid team on paper. I know it's not comparable as some of the big flashier teams in the conference or big flashier teams altogether in NCAA men's volleyball, but I think McKendree is so much better than what most people give them credit for, and they're so much better than 7th place. Heck, they might even finish higher than 7th place, but time will tell. Next up, we got Lindenwood. Their notable returning players are AJ Lewis, graduate outside hitter, who was all MIVA first team last year, Rayshawn Bonner, graduate opposite, all MIVA second team from last year, Ian Schuler, sophomore opposite, all MIVA second team from last year. And their other notable players are Clay Weeder, redshirt junior outside hitter, and Connor Sheehan, senior setter. Their key departures are Kyle Deutschman, libero, and Rodney Wallace, middle blocker. So my outlook for Lindenwood is this. They're actually not too far behind from the next 2 teams that I'm about to talk about. They return all but one All-League honoree, and they return their setter, and they could turn heads in conference play. The question marks for Lindenwood will be, who's going to be their libero, Noah Varga or Brendan Schobert? And can the middle step up, such as Hunter Bailey, Caden Warner, Kenneth Naples, Owen Walsh, and Ty Bumgarth? I really think that Lindenwood is a little bit better, and they actually did not finish far behind points of the next 2 teams up on them. And one of the higher teams up and chosen to finish 5th in the conference ahead of Lindenwood is Purdue-Fort Wayne. Their notable returning players, John Dydrich, graduate outside/opposite hitter, All-MIVA first team, Bryce Walker, senior middle blocker, All-MIVA first team, and their other notable players are Mark Frazier, junior outside hitter/opposite, Carlos Mercado, graduate outside hitter opposite, Zach Solomon, junior setter, and Wilmer Hernandez, graduate outside hitter/libero. Their key departures consisted of Noah Melendez, libero, Sergio Carrillo, setter, and Ryan Stepanop. Let me try to pronounce this right. Ryan Stepanidis, middle blocker. Stepanidis. I thought it was going to be Stepanopoulos, but it's Ryan Stepanidis, middle blocker. My outlook for Purdue-Fort Wayne. They are 100% MIVA contender quality, especially with John Dydrich back. Let me tell you how big John Dydrich is. Him coming back to Purdue-Fort Wayne is big. A couple seasons ago, Purdue-Fort Wayne led the Mastodons to the MIVA championship, conference championship, where they eventually lost to Ball State because Ball State had such a loaded team. But John Dydrich is so big. I'm surprised he was not All-American honorable mention. And you're going to be hearing me say that quite a bit. And this is no knock on any of the other All-Americans from that were honorable mention or All-American second team or whatnot. But John Dydrich is so crucial right there. But you know what else is crucial? Having help for him, as Bryce Walker and Mark Frazier are big-time help for him. And Purdue-Fort Wayne is probably better than 5th in the conference. The only question marks are who's going to be the libero. Is it going to be Wilmer Hernandez, Andrew Mayer, Raul Papaleo? And also another big question mark for Purdue-Fort Wayne is, do they run 5-1 or will they still continue to run 6-2 like they did last year? And they have 3 key home matches. They play Hawaii twice, which I think will be a big test for them to see where they're at in terms of the barometer. And then Penn State, which I think will be a sneaky good matchup. But Purdue-Fort Wayne is definitely on the underrated side. I would not be surprised if Purdue-Fort Wayne were to give a little bit of a scare in any of the top 4 teams. And jumping into the top 4 teams of the MIVA is Lewis. Their notable returning players are Christian Prayer, redshirt senior opposite, All-MIVA second team, Max Roque, junior sophomore, All-MIVA second team, and their other notable players include Michael Sack, redshirt senior middle blocker, Cyver Drolsum, sophomore opposite, and Tyler Morgan, junior setter. Their key departures include Jason Gibbs, libero, Kevin Calling, setter, who transferred to Hawaii, and Antonio Elias, middle blocker, as well as Cole Brillhart, outside hitter. So my outlook for Lewis is this. They survived the post-Tyler Mitchum era. So if you all remembered, I basically was knocking Lewis for basically wondering what they're going to do without Tyler Mitchum because he was kind of their go-to guy. And they returned some notable talent. Now, they did not have one All-MIVA first-teamer. It's sad, actually, considering they actually finished, I think, 5th in the conference. But c'est la vie. They're not on the level of Ohio State and Loyola. I'm just going to throw that out there. They are nowhere near the level of Ohio State and Loyola, but they could possibly hang with them. Their question marks are, can they be consistent in MIVA? And they have some crucial matches against Penn State on the road, UCLA at home, BYU at home, at Long Beach State, Hawaii at home. Hawaii, UCI, and GCU in the Outrigger Invitational. So, and my other question mark is, can this team have an all-conference first-teamer? I really think they can, but at the same time, there's got to be that one person that steps up. As Mike Pat pops into the chat room, he says, have a great show, Teran. Thank you, Mike. All right, third place team that's slated to finish in the MIVA, Ball State. So notable returning players, Tanashi Davazocheva. If I butchered that, I apologize to Ball State fans. So Tanashi Davazocheva, outside hitter, junior outside hitter, and he's also an AVCA All-American honorable mention, and he was also All-MIVA first team. And then some other notable players, Dyer Ball, senior opposite, Vanis Buckholz, junior middle blocker, and Lucas Pitiak, senior libero. And then their key departures were obviously the big one, Caleb Jenis, David Flores, their setter, Felix Egaravba, middle blocker, And I don't know if this guy's first name is pronounced Jacob or Jakob, but I'm going to say Jakob Wiercinski, setter. So my outlook for Ball State is this. They lost a lot of key players from last year's team, but they are still solid and they can make some noise. I'm going to be saying Ball State in the First Point Collegiate Challenge, which I am still trying to inquire about media passes because I want to interview Donan Cruz and his team. Hopefully, if they win, I'd hate to interview them after a loss, but it is what it is. And my question marks for them is, can they keep up with Loyola and Ohio State? And who will be their setter this year? Will it be Peter Zorowski, Griffin Satterfield, Lucas Machado, or Aaron Hernandez? No, not the Aaron Hernandez from the New England Patriots. So, Ball State, I think, is a good team. My only problem is, what will they do without Caleb Jennings? Who is going to be that it guy? Will it be Tanashi? Will it be Vanis Buckles in the middle? Will it be Dyer Ball? Will it be one of their freshmen? So that's kind of my big thing for Ball State. I think they can still be a solid team, but I don't know if they're on the level of Loyola and Ohio State. Speaking of Loyola, that is the team that has chosen to finish second in the MIVA. Notable returning players: Peter Van Buren, redshirt junior opposite, AVCA All-American second team, All-MIVA first team. Dan Mangun, redshirt junior setter, AVCA All-American, honorable mention, All-MIVA first team. Jamie Meinhardt, senior middle blocker, All-MIVA second team. Nicodemus Meyer, junior middle blocker, All-MIVA second team. And Matt Oakley, redshirt junior libero, All-MIVA second team. Other notable players for Loyola include Colton Brooks, redshirt senior outside hitter, Jack Jens, redshirt senior outside hitter, Lucas Anderson, freshman opposite, and Jake Reed, freshman outside hitter. So I included Jake Reed on here just because, well, I've seen Jake Reed play, and he's a dog. I will just say, he and Lucas Anderson. And I'm not just saying that Lucas Anderson is the son of Anne-Marie Anderson, who's sometimes featured on the UCLA broadcasts and maybe the Pac-12 volleyball broadcast. But for Lucas Anderson, he definitely is a very talented player, and I really think he can make some noise in terms of his playing time. I'm 95% certain he and Coach are on good terms, and heck, I think maybe he could get some playing time. My outlook for Loyola: great amount of returning players and a mixture of on-the-rise young players. They could definitely contend with Ohio State for the MIVA crown, and they could be a dark horse to contend for the national championship. My question marks for Loyola is, can they not lose when it matters most? I was very disappointed in Loyola that they lost in the first round of the MIVA tournament. Yes, the MIVA tournament and conference tournaments altogether is a whole different animal. However, I will just say, for them to lose to McKendree, which wound up winning one conference game, I just don't know what happened. Especially when you have Parker Van Buren you have Parker Van Buren, and you also had Cole Schlotthauer. How do you lose when you have those type of players? It just doesn't make any sense. Were they just setting Cole and Parker so much that they were just so one-dimensional? And they have a tough start to the season. They're at Hawaii to start the season, then they have a road trip to Stanford, then they play BYU and UCLA at home. So that's a tough start to the season, but John Hawks would not want it any other way. And Jen B in the chat room says OH, and all I gotta say is IO, which is perfect segue to go into the team that is slated to finish first in the MIVA, Ohio State. Some notable returning players include Jacob Pasteur, that's the big one right there. Senior outside hitter, AVCA All-American first team, MIVA Player of the Year from last year. MIVA Player of the Year from last year, All-MIVA first team, and preseason Player of the Year for this year. Shane Wetzel, sophomore opposite, AVCA All-American honorable mention, MIVA Newcomer of the Year, and All-MIVA second team. They also have Cole Young, junior middle blocker, All-MIVA first team, and some other notable players for Ohio State: Michael Wright, redshirt senior setter, Noah Plattfoot, senior setter, Justin Howard, redshirt senior middle blocker, and Thomas Poole, senior libero. Their key departures include Samuel Clark and Jack Stevens. My outlook for Ohio State: very promising, having returned all their players with honors back, and they're probably the deepest team in the MIVA, no question about it. My only question marks for Ohio State is, can they fend away the challenges from Ball State, Loyola, and any other team that is itching to just beat them. And can they not also underestimate any other team in the MIVA? Which I don't think they will, just because Kevin Birch, former set point guest, is one good volleyball coach. Very good volleyball coach. Also, can Ohio State prove themselves as a true contender? They've faced the likes of UCLA and Penn State and USC twice in non-conference play. So obviously they face UCLA in the first point challenge, and then they also have Penn State in 2 non-conference play matches, and I think they have USC in the first point challenge as well as they play at USC in the Big Ten Pac-12 challenge, which I don't know how they're going to do that next year since UCLA and USC are going to be in the Big Ten. They might as well just call it the Big Ten challenge altogether, but I think for Ohio State, they can definitely contend for a national championship. My only question is, can they contend with the likes of Hawaii, Long Beach State, Penn State, UCLA? That is going to be the big mountain to climb. But with most of Ohio State's returners back, I really think that the Buckeyes can really do some damage. Next up, let's jump into the EIVA. As last year, there was one team that made the semifinals of the National Collegiate Men's Volleyball Tournament, or the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament. So, the first team that was chosen to finish 6th in the conference, out of 6 teams, is Harvard. Their notable returning players: Ethan Smith, senior middle blocker, all EIVA second team. And their other notable returning players include James Barden, junior setter, Zach Birdie, sophomore outside hitter, who I talked about last year when I did my previews, and who led the team in kills, by the way, Cade McGovern, junior opposite, Trevor Schultz, senior middle blocker, Owen Fanning, junior outside hitter, and Logan Shepard, outside hitter, but he played libero last year. Their key departures is, well, they only had one honoree from last year, and they didn't lose anyone else that was notable. So, my outlook for Harvard. This team is, if there's one word to describe Harvard men's volleyball, it's anomaly. They don't have the All-Americans or All-Conference honors that most people would expect them to have, but they returned a good portion of its notable players from last year. And this team is rather tall. My only question mark is, who will they have at libero, and will they have an actual libero instead of converting outside hitter to libero? And I said this team is tall, but are they tall and athletic? But here's my thing. I think Harvard might be better than 6th place in the EIVA. I really think that Harvard is a little underrated, if you ask me, with all those returning players. I know they don't have the flashiest numbers, but they have some tall guys, they have some good athletes on their team, and Ethan Smith, I'm very surprised this team isn't selected higher. But I really think Harvard is a little bit better than 6th place. Only a little bit, though. Next up, we have Charleston, who is slated to finish 5th in the conference, Charleston of West Virginia. Their notable returning players include Garrett Schnitker, right side graduate, all EIVA second team. So they put right side, but I refer to these players as opposites, but I digress. They also return Curtis Raines, junior libero, all EIVA honorable mention. And some other notable players include Paul Stommel, junior setter, transferred from Limestone University, and Cole Duncanson, junior middle blocker, who transferred from Queen's University. They lost a lot to their departures, as Diego Villafane, their setter, was a big loss. Will Kaimanauer, middle blocker, that's a big loss. Luke Hogue Bavel, outside hitter. Lachlan Bray, outside hitter. And Velt Bees, middle blocker, was another big-time departure. So, my outlook for Charleston is this. They got really hit hard in terms of departures, and they'll have a tough time replicating last year's start, which, if you remember, they went 13-0 before losing to George Mason. They have a lot of voids to fill, and their biggest question mark is who backs up Garrett Schnitker, or who becomes their number 2 option, or do they have a number 1 option at the outside hitter position? And how do they build off of last year's success? That's another big question mark right there. But here's the thing. Charleston's schedule might be just right because they only play one team that made the NCAA tournament, and that is Penn State. So their schedule might be beneficial to them, considering they lost so much to graduation, it's not even funny. if you compare this year's team to last year's team, it's not even remotely close. So Charleston might benefit from having I wouldn't say soft schedule because no match is guaranteed, but they'll benefit from not having the most toughest schedule compared to like other teams in the conference. But for Charleston, this is going to be an uphill climb, but do not underestimate the Golden Eagles. I really think Charleston has some players. Garrett Schnitker, I have seen back in his days at Irvine Valley College. I think he's solid. It's just that he's going to need the help, otherwise he's going to suffer from Tyler Mitchum syndrome. Finishing fourth in the EIVA is NJIT, or New Jersey Institute of Technology. So their notable returning players include Alessandro Negri, junior outside hitter, all EIVA second team. And their other notable returning players include Carson Williams, graduate middle blocker, Julian Meisner, graduate opposite, Griffin Feisler, senior setter, and Christian Trevino, junior libero. Their key departures include Jens Feldtis, outside hitter, Martin De Chavaria, middle blocker, who transferred to Pepperdine, Antonio Feliciano, outside hitter, and Roque Nido, setter. So my outlook for NJIT, and by the way, I really like NJIT. I really think they're probably the most under the radar team. I feel that they don't do the best in conference in the regular season, but they somehow come alive in the postseason. Because if you remember last year, they finished dead last in the conference, but they wound up upsetting Charleston, and eventually they lost in the semifinals. But it is what it is. They eventually lost to Princeton, but you gotta love that New Jersey rivalry. But NJIT's outlook. They have a lot of voids to fill at certain positions. They lost a good portion of their starters, but they have some solid returners. My biggest question marks for this team is, can they stay healthy? That was kind of an issue last year, as when they played Long Beach State, and I talked to the head coach, he basically straight up said, we're dealing with injuries right now, and it's tough. It was tough times for them. And their non-conference schedule should benefit them, and they could pull an upset or two. They have that Jersey grit, and that is a big thing right there. But my thing for NJIT is this. They're going to have an uphill climb in terms of competing with some of the big talent in the conference, let alone all together. But I like Danny Goncalves. I think Danny Goncalves is a great coach. I think he does great things with the team. I think he gets the most out of his players. And I feel that NJIT might actually benefit from having a good portion of its games at home, as opposed to playing on the road. Like this year, they'll play Long Beach State at NJIT, which I think is great. My only question mark is why would you make that your alumni weekend? You should have just had one alumni night match and then just been over with it. But I guess alumni weekend does make a little bit more sense. Next up, we have George Mason, slated to finish third in the EIVA. They actually garnered one first-place vote. So their notable returning players include Omar Hoyas, senior outside hitter, all EIVA second team. I'm probably going to mispronounce this guy's name, but Georgi Zakhariev, sophomore setter, all EIVA second team, and Paul Wysinski, sophomore libero, all EIVA second team. And their other notable players include Liam French, redshirt sophomore outside hitter, Jack Bowles, redshirt senior opposite, and Lucas Little, junior middle blocker. Their key departures, I don't think this team had any key departures. In terms of their players that had notable numbers from last year, and in terms of their honorees, they didn't lose anybody to departure and whatnot. My outlook for George Mason, while this team lacks the All-Americans, they make up for in returning key positions and notable stat leaders. My biggest challenge is, my biggest thing for George Mason, and that's my biggest question mark, is can they challenge Princeton for second in the EIVA, aka the second best EIVA? Can they be the second best EIVA team behind Princeton or behind Penn State? In other words, can they challenge Princeton for the right to be the second best team in the conference? My other question marks include, can this team win on the road in the first half of their season, and can they prove itself? So my thing for George Mason is they got a lot of their games on the road to start out in the season, probably because it's a conflict of men's basketball and women's basketball, and then men's volleyball, unfortunately, has to play on the road, which is fine. I mean, Princeton also has to deal with that as well. I'm certain other teams have to deal with that as well in terms of men's and women's basketball. But for George Mason, they garnered a first-place vote, so I don't think George Mason will be as bad as most people think they are. Obviously, they don't have All-Americans, the All-Americans that most people think they should have, but I think with Omar Hoyas back, I think George Mason should be solid. I really think George Mason is going to be slightly... I think they could be better than third place, but Princeton is looming. And that's perfect segue to go into Princeton, who is slated to finish second in the EIVA. The notable returning players are Ben Harrington, senior outside hitter, all EIVA first team, Henry Wedbush, junior setter, all EIVA second team, Nahiro Omene, junior opposite/middle blocker, all EIVA honorable mention, Ryan Venna, sophomore middle blocker, all EIVA honorable mention, and their other notable players, I notice how I said the word player, not players, include James Hartley, senior outside hitter and opposite. They probably have more notable players, but that was the one that caught my eye. Their key departures include Brady Wedbush, outside hitter / opposite, Nico Pasiviak, libero, and Nate Thompson, outside hitter / opposite. I feel Princeton is going to be much better, probably has more other notable players, and I'm going to be hearing it from Sam Schweisky, but I digress. Before I go on to my outlook, I'm just going to say Ben Harrington is the heartbeat of this team, and I don't know how Ben Harrington doesn't get All-American. He and John Diedrich are the biggest snubs for All-American. I really think that Ben Harrington is so, so underrated. He's vastly underrated, and I really think that he will get the job done this year for Princeton. My outlook, now for the outlook for Princeton. They're probably the best team in the EIVA that could challenge Penn State, but that's saying a lot. They have solid returners, and they've only lost one conference honoree. My biggest question mark for Princeton is who's going to be the libero following Pasiviak, and those two candidates include Simon Zhao or Matt Suh. And they have a West Coast road trip, and you could include BYU if you want to as well, just because Princeton kind of suffers from the same thing George Mason goes through, that Princeton has the conflict of men's and women's basketball, and then Princeton is basically, they got to be road warriors. And Sam Schweisky loves to have this West Coast road trip. He did this last year when playing UCLA, Pepperdine, and Concordia Irvine, and he thought his team grew. He even took a set off of UCLA. But I really think that it's going to be quite the road trip. And it really sucks that I have to go to Texas. I really want to see Sam Schweisky in Princeton. The only way I'll be seeing Princeton is if they make the NCAA tournament or the National Collegiate Tournament. But honestly, I think Princeton is going to be just fine. I think they'll be second in the conference, most likely, unless George Mason kind of one-ups them, or, heaven forbid, they get a bunch of injuries, which you don't really want. And then lastly, you have Penn State, the top dog of the EIVA. This comes to no surprise because they basically swept pretty much all the votes except for one, which I'm pretty sure Penn State can't vote for itself. The notable returning players for Penn State include Toby Ezeonu, senior middle blocker, AVCA All-American first team, as well as the All-EIVA first team, Mihal Kawal, senior outside hitter, AVCA All-American honorable mention, All-EIVA first team, Ryan Merck, junior libero, AVCA All-American honorable mention, All-EIVA first team. Then you got Owen Rose, junior middle blocker, AVCA All-American honorable mention, and All-EIVA first team. And then some other notable players include John Kerr, graduate opposite, and Josh Rosenblum, redshirt sophomore setter, who transferred from Long Beach State. Huge right there. Their key departures include Cal Fisher, opposite, Cole Bogner, setter, and Brett Wildman, outside hitter. So my outlook for Penn State is this. They are the class of the EIVA, and they are still the class of the EIVA. And they could still be a national contender. And my only question marks for Penn State is, who is setting after Bogner's departure? Will it be Luke Snyder? Will it be Mike Schwab? Or will it be Josh Rosenblum, who I mentioned in the other notable players? If this team can stay healthy and consistent, they're definitely going to be a contender. Because if you remember, they did not have Brett Wildman, and that was crucial for Penn State early on. They didn't lose to any big-time matches, but having Brett Wildman, or not having Brett Wildman, was just such a problem just because it took him a little while back to get him back onto the court and to get him back to his strong self. And this team has a gauntlet of a schedule. And I think this is perfect just because the EIVA obviously is going to be... They don't want to take any chances. They want to get all the battle-tested matches they can get. As they got UCLA twice, they're at Long Beach State, they play Stanford, they play Ohio State, and then they play Ball State, which that's going to be... Those are some big-time matches, and I look forward to seeing Penn State at Long Beach State. And hopefully I can maybe get Toby Ezeonu on the show, if not Mark Pavlik back on the show. Next up, we got my favorite conference. Okay, maybe not my favorite conference, but the conference I'm kind of close with. The Big West Conference. So, CSUN and UC San Diego both are slated to finish 5th in the conference. So, we'll start with UC San Diego, as their notable returning players include Evan Boyle, sophomore libero, All-Big West freshman team, Josh Ewart, sophomore outside hitter, All-Big West freshman team, Jim Garrison, sophomore middle blocker, All-Big West freshman team, and Josh Schellinger, redshirt sophomore, All-Big West freshman team. Their other notable returning players, or other notable players, include Luke Chandler, junior opposite, who transferred from LIU, Sebastian Lara, junior outside hitter, who transferred from Orange Coast College, Gabe Dyer, junior setter/opposite, and Nick Rigo, senior middle blocker. Their key departures were Ryan Kaw, outside hitter, and Berkeley Maisfield, opposite. So my outlook for UC San Diego: most of their young core returns, and they're not as bad as their projected finish has them to be, but they're not as experienced as the team above them, CSUN. The biggest question marks is who becomes the it guy with Ryan Kaw graduated. Can their young players grow as the season progresses? And they have a challenging schedule with opponents such as UCLA, GCU, times 2, and then they play one time at... Well, I should also mention that UC San Diego plays GCU once at home and one time at UC Santa Barbara in the A6 Challenge. They're also at Ohio State, at Ball State, and they play USC twice, once at home and once on the road. So UC San Diego's got a lot on their dish, and they are a young team. So we'll see if the Tritons under Brad Rostratter, former Set Point guest, can get the job done. Next up, we got CSUN. Their notable returning players include Kyle Hobus, outside hitter, redshirt senior, All-Big West first team, Griffin Walters, senior outside hitter, All-Big West honorable mention, Malcolm King, sophomore middle blocker, All-Big West freshman team. Other notable players from CSUN include Donovan Constable, junior setter, Talon Cook, senior libero, and Lorenzo Bertozzi, junior outside hitter. I don't think CSUN had any big-time departures or any notable departures that I know of. Maybe I missed something, but when I checked everything, I saw that they did not have any big-time departures from my knowledge. So the outlook for CSUN is they don't have the All-Americans, kind of like George Mason does, but they make up for it with a plethora of returning players. And they could actually be the 4th best team in the conference. So as you all know, Hawaii, Long Beach State, and UC Irvine are the three amigos in the Big West Conference. And they're probably going to be seeing each other, or they're going to be playing in the Big West Conference semifinals. Now, which begs the question is, who is that 4th team that meets in the semifinals? Anyway, so they could be the 4th best team in the conference, but their question marks are, can they challenge Long Beach State, Hawaii, and UC Irvine? And can they pull the upsets like it did last year? If you remember last year, CSUN beat Stanford not once, but twice, which I think is probably their best wins of the season. Or was the best wins of their season. Next up, we got UC Santa Barbara, projected to finish 4th in the Big West Conference. Notable returning players include Owen Berg, sophomore outside hitter, All Big West freshman team. And their other notable returning players, or their other notable players in general, include George Bruning, freshman outside hitter, Jack Walmer, redshirt junior setter, Ben Court, redshirt sophomore outside hitter, Jaden Glenn, redshirt junior libero/setter, and Josh Aruya, freshman middle blocker. The key departures from UC Santa Barbara are obviously Ryan Wilcox, the outside hitter, Dane Chalmers, outside hitter/libero. I still can't believe he had to play libero. He's mainly outside hitter. I've known him to be an outside hitter. Don't argue with me about it. And then Nick Amoruso, outside hitter / opposite. So my outlook for the Gauchos is solid returners and noteworthy young players, but they've got a lot of voids to be filled. And my biggest question mark is who's going to be the libero for them? Will it be Jaden Glenn or will it be Joe Wallace? And who's going to be the it guy with Ryan Wilcox graduated? So one of the notable players that I said to watch out for is George Bruning. He's 6'10", and I really think he's going to be a force. I've seen him play back in his days at Corona Del Mar. The dude could put the ball down, and he could jump really high. So I think for George Bruning, you got to watch out for him. Also keep an eye out for Josh Aruya. Those are their two big-time freshmen who I think were part of that big freshman class that was signed this year from the class of 2023. So I think for Santa Barbara, it's going to take a little time just because they've got young talent, but I think they got to grow up sooner rather than later. Next up, we have UC Irvine slated to finish in the top 3 as they're slated to finish 3rd. Their notable returning players include Halir Heno, junior outside hitter, AVCA All-American First Team and First Team All-Big West. Joe Carlos, redshirt senior setter, AVCA All-American Honorable Mention, All-Big West Honorable Mention. And then Maxim Grigoriev, sophomore middle blocker, All-Big West freshman team. And then other notable players include Brett Sheward, graduate setter who transferred from Hawaii, Connor Campbell, senior middle blocker, Cole Power, graduate libero, and Will Darcy, sophomore right side / opposite hitter. Their key departures include Francesco Sani, right side, and Cole Gillis, outside hitter. My outlook for UC Irvine is this. They could definitely challenge Long Beach State or Hawaii in the Big West, whether it's in the tournament or in the regular season. They have a tough schedule, and that is just the way David Niffen likes it. They have 2 matches against UCLA, one at UCLA, one at the Bren Event Center. They play Stanford twice at Stanford. They play GCU and Lewis and Hawaii, all in the Outrigger Invitational. And speaking of Hawaii, they have to play Hawaii twice. The good thing is that UC Irvine gets to play Hawaii at UC Irvine. Their biggest question mark is, who's going to be the setter, or will David Niffen run 6'2"? Because you've got Joe Carlos, who was the setter last year, but Brett Sheward, for those of you that don't know, Brett Sheward did set before he played libero at Hawaii. And I think that was kind of the thing for Brett Sheward. He wanted to become the setter following Jakob Tele's graduation from Hawaii. Don't quote me on that, but I think that might have been one of the reasons why he transferred, but I digress. And can they beat the top competition? Because if you remember last year, they only had 2 wins against some of the top teams last year. I think one was against Long Beach State in the Big West Conference Tournament semifinals. And then I think the other was US. Well, no, they lost to USC. They actually do not know, but they have some stiff competition this year. All I just know is that they had 2 wins. I want to say one of those wins came against USC, but they have some stiff competition, and the Big West does not make anything easier. And the big thing for UC Irvine is, will they be able to win in Crawford Hall instead of the Bren Event Center for the first 2.5 months of the season? So I do not know why UC Irvine is having to play its matches at Crawford Hall as opposed to the Bren Event Center, but it must be another one of those scheduling conflicts with the men's and women's basketball teams, and that's going to suck having to play in Crawford Hall because there won't be any challenges. I don't think they'll have a challenge system unless they basically have all that technology at their disposal. And if that's the case, then, ooh golly, it's going to be a lot. And if you're a media person like me, seating is going to be so limited. And if you're basically hoping to get a good spot at a big-time UC Irvine match, well, you got to basically inform the SID in advance. Speaking of Hawaii, they are slated to finish 2nd in the Big West Conference, as their notable returning players include Guillermo Voss, senior middle blocker, AVCA first-team All-American and All-First-Team Big West, Spiros Hakas, senior outside hitter / opposite, AVCA second-team All-American and first-team All-Big West, Chaz Galloway, senior outside hitter, AVCA All-American Honorable Mention and first-team All-Big West, and Kurt Nestor, redshirt sophomore middle blocker, first-team Big West Big West all-freshman team. And then other notable players for Hawaii include Kevin Calling, graduate setter from Lewis, who transferred from Lewis, Teran Rosenthal, freshman setter, and Keani Phim, senior outside hitter, who came in as a serving specialist, by the way. Their key departures include Jakob Tele, Demetrios Muklius, Brett Sheward, who transferred to UC Irvine, like I said, and Cole Hoagland. So Hawaii, my outlook for them is this, and I hope I don't really miff Hawaii fans, but they're still very talented despite losing half of its stars from last year's successful team that made it all the way to the national championship. They will challenge Long Beach State in the Big West Conference, that's for sure. Their question marks is, who fills the void at center with Tele graduated? Will it be Kevin Calling? I think it's most likely. Or will it be Teran Rosenthal? Because Teran Rosenthal is so tall. I want to say he's like 6'10", maybe 6'9" on a natural day. Maybe 7 feet on a really good day. And then who fills the void at libero for Brett Sheward? And they have key matches, Big West Conference matches, away at Long Beach State and UC Irvine. They have Stanford twice at home. They're at Ball State. They play Loyola twice at home. And they also have the Outrigger Invitational, which obviously is big time right there. By the way, that Outrigger Invitational match against UC Irvine will not count toward the Big West Conference record for Hawaii or UC Irvine. Just got to throw that out there. And then lastly, we have Long Beach State slated to finish atop the Big West Conference, as their notable returning players include Mason Briggs, senior libero, AVCA first-team All-American and first-team All-Big West, Clark Godbold, senior opposite, AVCA first-team All-American and Big West honorable mention, Sotiris Shapanis, junior outside hitter, AVCA second-team All-American, first-team All-Big West, Simon Torwey, senior middle blocker, AVCA second-team All-American, first-team All-Big West. Aiden Knipe, senior setter, AVCA All-American, honorable mention, Big West, honorable mention. And then Connor Bloom, sophomore outside hitter, Big West All-American, or Big West All-Freshman team. And their other notable returning players include Nathan Harlan, senior outside hitter / opposite, Dearius McRaven, junior middle blocker. I'm probably going to butcher this guy's last name, but Daniil Herstinovich, freshman opposite, and Ty Carson, freshman outside hitter. So Ty Carson I've seen a couple times. He's actually pretty darn good. My big thing is, will he be able to be bigger as a freshman for Long Beach State? Because high school volleyball and college volleyball are two totally different things. You cannot BS in Alan Knipe's system. If you're thinking of an excuse, don't. Alan Knipe is going to sniff that out ASAP. So my outlook for Long Beach State, they are very promising with all the players that they return, and they are a definite contender. And I'm going to go on a limb and say that they could challenge and maybe beat UCLA, as they are the class of the Big West. My only question marks are health and consistency, especially when it truly matters. So health was kind of a big concern, as Alan, if you all saw the Big West Conference men's volleyball show, you all probably saw that, well, they suffered with injuries and they suffered with illnesses. A few of their players got sick on their road trip to George Mason, but they were able to overcome that. And then obviously attrition is a big thing. Consistency is another big thing for me, as here's my thing for Long Beach State. Last year was kind of an interesting year just because they made it to the Final Four, but you also got to remember, in the Big West Conference semifinals, they got swept at UC Irvine. Keep in mind that they beat UC Irvine at UC Irvine 6 nights ago, albeit it was a reverse sweep, but Long Beach State just did not look like themselves. But it kind of does help that UC Irvine did have basically some familiarity with Long Beach State. So for Long Beach State, they have to be consistent altogether. That kind of is the difference between playing in the quarterfinals and playing in the semifinals in the National Collegiate Tournament. But that's that for the Big West Conference right there. I think it's going to be an exciting conference race when it comes to the Big West Conference. I really think Hawaii and Long Beach State is going to be big time right there. That should be nationally televised. And don't be surprised if UC Irvine makes Long Beach State or Hawaii sweat, especially since they get Hawaii at Crawford Hall, I think, if not the Brent Event Center. I haven't really dived deep into Hawaii's schedule, but it is what it is. All right, last one is the MPSF, which obviously is the home to UCLA. But first, we got to start at the bottom. So, Concordia Irvine, who's slated to finish 7th in the MPSF. Their notable returning players include Jacob Riley, sophomore libero, all MPSF second team. And then they also return Johnny Anselmo, redshirt junior. And their other notable returning players, include Johnny Anselmo, redshirt junior outside hitter, Gil Harold, graduate middle blocker, Gage Doble, sophomore outside hitter, Nathan Bitao, graduate setter, and Makai Lipson, junior setter. Their key departure, and this was probably the big one, Uriel Batista, opposite. My outlook for Concordia. They return a bunch of their top players from last year's team, but they're going to struggle without Uriel Batista. And they actually have an interim coach in Chris Seifert, as that's going to get some getting used to. But Chris Seifert does have NCAA men's volleyball collegiate coaching experience and playing experience. So for those of you that didn't know, yeah, I was very surprised by this. I don't know what happened with Riley Salmon, but wherever he is, I wish him the best. This is probably the most surprising I've seen since Kai Doug Quem took over for Sean Patchell at LIU. But I digress. And my biggest question marks for Concordia are who's going to be the it man with Uriel Batista gone, and which middles do they roll with? As Cole Vigo transferred from Erskine, Maxwell McCullough is also on the team from Concordia, and they also have Wolf, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Wolf Buersert. As Concordia's got a lot of good middles, but you can only roll with 2 in the rotation, if not maybe 3. If not, you can convert them to opposite. So, Concordia's got a lot of void filling to do with Uriel Batista having graduated and now playing pro, so that's my big thing right there. How do you fill the void for Uriel Batista? He was a man on a mission. Also, I am very disappointed that Uriel Batista was not all-conference first team, as he was all-conference second team. I really think he's much better than all-conference second team, but I digress. Next up, we got Pepperdine, slated to finish 6th in the MPSF. Their notable returning players include Akhenaken Wumi, graduate middle blocker, all MPSF second team. And they have also got, in terms of their other notable players, Joe DeLuzio, redshirt junior outside hitter, Anderson Fuller, senior middle blocker, Trey Cole, senior libero. And they've got some notable additions, such as Cole Ketrasinski, graduate outside hitter / opposite from UCLA, Martin De Chavaria, graduate middle blocker from NJIT, and they also got Jake Olson, who spent a year at OCC, and now he is at Pepperdine. Their key departures include Jalen Jasper, outside hitter, Bryce Dvorak, their setter, who's going to be very tough to replace, and Jacob Steele, who was the opposite. My outlook for Pepperdine. They are much better than what the MPSF has them finishing in, and they could surprise a lot of teams this year. They have underrated talent, but their biggest question marks are who's going to be setting. They only have 2 setters on the team, Ryan Graves and Tyler Stewart, and they're both freshmen. So Jonathan Winder has a big question and a big void to fill when it comes to Bryce Dvorak, because Bryce Dvorak was such an unmatched talent at setter. He probably was a top 5 setter in the nation. And they have so many talented middles, but who is going to be the best one to have on the court? And I didn't even go through all the middles. I just went through Martin De Chavaria, Akinwumi, Anderson Fuller. Those 3 are the 3 amigos. But now, Jonathan Winder has to basically thin the horde and whatnot. And who knows, maybe he has to throw someone at opposite. But time will tell. Next up, we got USC slated to finish 6th in the conference. Their notable returning players include Dylan Klein, sophomore outside hitter, AVCA All-American honorable mention, and All-MPSF freshman team, as well as All-MPSF second team, who also led the team in kills with 357. They also returned Ryan Sprague, sophomore setter, Luke Hobis, junior opposite, Austin Stewart, junior libero, and Kyle Paulson, senior middle blocker. They've also got other notable players such as Wes Smith, the number 1 recruit from the class of 2023, freshman middle blocker. And they also got Josh Friedman, a setter from Hawaii, junior setter, by the way. And he also transferred from Orange Coast College as well. Key departures include practically everyone. Notably Kevin Cobrin, Simon Gallas, Lucas Frasrand, George Dyer, and Nate Tennant. So USC has a lot of void filling to do, as they got hit hard in terms of the key departures. They only returned 1 player with honors, and they'll need other players to step up and relieve the pressure from my boy Dylan Klein, former Set Point guest. My biggest question mark will be who is setting. Will it be Ryan Sprague or will it be Josh Friedman? And can this team survive until next year with its challenging schedule? So here's the thing for USC. They get Sterling Foley signed his national letter of intent. So for USC, if they can survive until next year, I really think USC could be a threat going forward. Because you got Dylan Klein, Wes Smith, and you also have Sterling Foley, who I think is probably going to be top 5 in the nation in terms of the class of 2024 high school boys volleyball players. My thing for USC is it's all about this year. Can they survive this year? I would really like to see Wes Smith in Jeff Nygaard's rotation. Next up, we have GCU, who actually tied for third in terms of finishing in the MPSF. Their notable returning players include Jackson Hickman, redshirt senior outside hitter, AVCA All-American second team, and All-MPSF honorable mention. Camden Gianni, redshirt senior opposite AVCA All-American honorable mention. Rico Wardlow, senior middle blocker, AVCA All-American honorable mention, and All-MPSF second team. And they also returned Cameron Thorne, sophomore middle blocker, All-MPSF freshman team. Nick Slight, redshirt junior setter, All-MPSF honorable mention. They also returned the likes of Jarrett Anderson, graduate opposite, Jordan Lucas, sophomore outside hitter, and Jack Palmer, junior outside hitter, who transferred from BYU a couple seasons ago. Their key departures include Christian Janke and Cole Udall. So if you've seen my interview with Matt Worley on Instagram, definitely do see it. He actually talks a good amount of GCU and what to expect of this year. So they're looking to build off of last year's NCAA tournament appearance, which is their only appearance. They return a good portion of their roster, but their biggest question marks are, can they stay consistent in the MPSF? Because they got off to such a blistering start, and then they kind of cooled off rapidly, including losing to Concordia Irvine. Yeah. And who will be the libero for GCU? Will it be Cooper Herndon, or will it be freshman Matthew Thornton? They've got lots of talent overall, but the libero position is their biggest question mark, and even Matt Worley, the head coach, basically talked about it. They lose Cole Udall to graduation, and it's going to be something big. So we'll see what happens. But GCU is definitely up there in terms of the MPSF talent. Next up, we have the other team that was slated to finish third in the MPSF, BYU. Notable returning players include Mix Romanis, junior outside hitter, AVCA All-American honorable mention, and All-MPSF first team. Trent Moser, sophomore outside hitter, All-MPSF freshman team. Gavin Julian, sophomore middle blocker, All-MPSF honorable mention. And then they've got other notable players such as Noah Hain, junior setter, Luke Benson, junior outside hitter, Capono Brown, senior opposite, Trent Moser, sophomore outside hitter, Tion Taylor, sophomore middle blocker, and John Stanley, senior defensive specialist, last libero. The key departures for BYU include Mitchell Worthington, libero, and Heath Hughes, setter. So my outlook for BYU, they're looking to build off of last year's success, which, I'm going to be honest, I don't think anyone predicted BYU to having such an amazing season. They have a lot of notable MPSF matches overall in Provo this year at Smith Fieldhouse, as they play the likes of UCLA, GCU, UC Irvine, and Ball State at home. They have a mixture of young and long-time experienced players, as their question marks are, can they stay healthy? That was the biggest thing right there. Their setters had a merry-go-round of who could stay healthy the most, and unfortunately it was just one setter after another, and then after another. And who will be the libero following the departure of Mitchell Worthington? Will it be John Stanley, or will it be Jackson Fife? I really think Sean Olmstead has a lot of big-time players to work with here on BYU, and I think after last year saying, hey, we proved everybody wrong, we're much better than what everyone thought we were going to be, look at what they can do this year. I'm really excited to see BYU. I've seen BYU, and they can serve really tough. And honestly, if they can stay consistent and injury-free, they might have a chance to maybe make the tournament in terms of the NCAA tournament. But will they be amongst some of the best MPSF teams? Of course. Can they challenge UCLA? Of course, especially since Smith Fieldhouse is so tough to play at. But can they win on the road? That's going to depend. Next up, is Stanford, slated to finish second in the MPSF. Their notable returning players include Will Rotman, redshirt senior outside hitter, second team All-AVCA All-American and All-MPSF honorable mention. Theo Snowy, sophomore opposite All-Freshman MPSF. Kevin Lamp, redshirt senior outside hitter, second team All-MPSF. Nathaniel Gates, redshirt senior middle blocker, second team All-MPSF. Ethan Hill, redshirt senior middle blocker, who is one of the other notable players. Then Nathan Leitsky, redshirt senior setter. And then their key departure, and they only have one, is Justin Louis, their libero. So my outlook for Stanford is they are a senior-laden team that has the best chance at challenging UCLA for the MPSF crown. And maybe as a dark horse making the NCAA tournament. My question marks are for Stanford consistency. They have had they did have a few bad losses here and there. Some of which were to CSUN, two of which were to CSUN. And who's going to be the libero? As their only libero on their roster listed is Matt Martinez. So Stanford's going to have to answer that question and then some. And then last but certainly not least is UCLA, slated to finish first in the MPSF. Their notable returning players include Andrew Rowan, sophomore setter, AVCA Newcomer of the Year, MPSF Freshman of the Year, all first team All-American, first team All-MPSF. They also have Ethan Champlin, senior outside hitter, first team AVCA All-American, first team All-MPSF. Merrick McHenry, redshirt senior middle blocker, first team AVCA All-American and All-MPSF selection, as well as MVP of the MPSF tournament. And then they return Alex Knight, redshirt senior outside hitter, second team AVCA All-American, All-MPSF first team, last year's NCAA tournament most outstanding player. Ido David is a notable returning player, redshirt junior outside hitter / opposite, first team All-AVCA All-American, first team All-MPSF, and then NCAA champion. He made the NCAA tournament all-tournament team. Then you got Guy Guinness, redshirt junior middle blocker, AVCA honorable mention, All-American, and then you got MPSF honorable mention. Their key departures include Troy Gooch, J.R. Norris IV, and Cole Ketrazinski, who transferred to Pepperdine. So my outlook for UCLA, most likely going to have a great season again. The only question mark is the libero. Who will replace Troy Gooch at libero? Coleman McDonough, Matthew Aziz, Ayrton Garcia Huardo, or my long shot, Luca Curci, as he got to play libero for UCLA in the fall. And Luca Curci could make an impact. I don't think Luca Curci is going to be cracking that rotation as an outside hitter, but maybe he can as a libero, because he has played libero in his high school volleyball career, but now he's at the college level, and the college level is a whole different perspective. And I would not be surprised if UCLA wound up winning the conference. My only big thing is, can UCLA run the table again? Because they wound up going undefeated in MPSF play in terms of the regular season, and they wound up winning the tournament. And then, basically, they wound up winning the NCAA tournament altogether. So, my thing for UCLA is, can anyone challenge them? My thing is, and I need to stop saying my thing is, UCLA will be challenged by Hawaii and Long Beach State. They're not going to be able to play Hawaii, so it's just going to be Long Beach State that's on the horizon. Penn State, I think, could challenge them, but it all is going to be dependent on which teams are going to show up. I really am looking forward to the UCLA-Long Beach State matchups. I really think those two are going to be barn burners, and that could be a potential NCAA championship preview, so keep an eye on that. But that's going to do it for my NCAA men's volleyball preview. I know I took a little over an hour, but I had to go through those 4 Power 5 conferences, and it took me quite a bit to basically get it all squared away. Unfortunately, I could not get to the Conference of Carolinas, but tough tamale for them. Today, we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, got some NCAA women's volleyball notable transfers to go over, and we've got some reflecting to do on 2023. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows on IE Sports Radio. We have shows ranging from Chicago to Wisconsin. We even have an all-sports show with Larry B, who is up for the IE Sports Radio Hall of Fame. But let's get back on into the volleyball action. So we have some NCAA notable women's volleyball transfers to go over. So let's jump on into the players that have entered the portals, starting with Bella D'Amico, setter from Georgia Tech. So she's a grad student, or she'll be a grad student next year, and she is going to make a big-time impact for anyone that needs a setter, such that she couldn't stay on Georgia Tech for another season, because in a year where Georgia Tech did not have Julia Bergman, or this was the first year without Julia Bergman, I really think that Georgia Tech was taken to greater heights, courtesy of D'Amico and Bianca Bertolino. So whoever lands Bella D'Amico is going to get a big time setter. As Cale Henderson pops into the chat room, he says, any Las Vegas volleyball updates? None that I know of in terms of the Ramblers, but the Pro Volleyball Federation's Las Vegas team is going to be starting up really soon. So keep an eye on that. It's going to be starting in January, if not in February. So next up, we have Kat Flood that entered the transfer portal from Pitt. She's also a grad student, as Kat Flood was a big part of Pitt's serving rotation. She would serve really strong for the Panthers, and unfortunately she could not flourish into that full 6 rotation. She was just a serving sub. But it's all good, as Kat Flood is going to do wonders for a team that not only needs a good server, but a good outside hitter as well. So I really hope nothing but the best for Kat Flood. Next up, we have Maggie Mendelson. So this marks the 4th Nebraska player in the transfer portal. As if you're including another player that I mentioned, Whitney Launstein, who didn't play last year, but she was part of the rotation, or part of the Nebraska's teams a couple seasons ago. Mendelson is now the 4th player that is entered the transfer portal from Nebraska. So it's unfortunate for Nebraska, but Mendelson is going to make a big impact for whoever needs a middle blocker. She has 2 years of eligibility remaining, and she's going to make a big time splash. And don't be surprised if, for some reason, if she had the relationship with Tyler Hildebrand back in maybe her freshman year, she goes to Long Beach State. I mean, that's kind of what happened with Callie Schwarzenbach. She transferred following her senior year to Long Beach State to basically be with Tyler Hildebrand. So, food for thought right there. Speaking of local players that I think could transfer to Long Beach State, Mele Koro Blagojevic has entered the transfer portal from Oklahoma. So she is going to be a sophomore next season, and I have actually seen Mele Koro Blagojevic play. From her days at Redondo Union, she was a beast of a player. Unfortunately, she did get hurt her last game of her high school career, which was kind of a sour note to end on, but it is what it is, as Koro Blagojevic is going to do wonders. She has a very good jump serve, and she mainly plays outside hitter and maybe opposite, but I guess last year she was relegated to defensive specialist and libero, so I really hope that wherever she goes, she lands back on her feet. And I even predicted that Long Beach State could be a possibility because it's close to home, which Long Beach State is pretty much close to Redondo Beach. Then and she played club volleyball at Long Beach Mizuno, which she knows Joy Mackenzie Furbringer and Matt Furbringer, even though those two are not on the Long Beach State coaching staff anymore. And it just makes so much sense because she's closer to her family, closer to home, and if there's one coach that could reinvigorate the volleyball passion within a volleyball player that just needs a fresh start, it's Tyler Hildebrand. I'm not just saying that just because I've seen Long Beach State quite a bit, but I am saying that because I think it would be the perfect fit. So Larry B says, I'm here, brother. Sorry I'm late. Hey, it's no problem, Larry. Better late than ever. So Washington State had not 1, not 2, but 3 players enter the transfer portal, as those players are Argentina Ung, setter, who's a grad student, Jasmine Martin, middle/opposite grad student, and then Magdalena Urich, outside hitter/opposite, who is also a grad student. So I don't know if y'all heard the news, but Jen Greeny, the former Washington State coach, has unfortunately stepped down from her position at Washington State, and now she's left for West Virginia. So you're probably wondering, well, what's going to happen with Washington State? Well, they now have a void in terms of their head coach. And I also kind of mentioned that maybe Burdette Greeny, her husband, goes with her as well. That's kind of my prediction, but if Burdette Greeny stays with Washington State, then so be it. But that's big news for Washington State, losing those 3 players. I want to say that losing their head coach kind of has something to do with it, but Washington State not being in a conference also has nothing to do with it, because the Pac-12 is officially dead as a doornail. The Pac-12 has basically moved to the Big Ten, or moved to the Big 12, or it's moved to the ACC. So all that's left is Oregon State and Washington State. But more on that later. Now let's get on into the notable transfers that have found a home. So this is basically from last week, as I didn't get to talk about it on my show. But the first notable one is Whitney Lowenstein, who is transferring from Nebraska to Texas. So if you all know about Whitney Lowenstein, she took the year off to basically be with family because her father passed away, and she just needed a year to basically reflect and basically heal up, because she also had an injury as well. But Whitney Lowenstein is transferring to Texas, and that's big time right there. So Marcus Losgreat, friend of the show and teammate on IE Sports Radio, he asked, is Texas winning it all this year? I basically didn't have a straight answer for that, but I'm starting to lean toward most likely now. Obviously, there are going to be other teams challenging them, like Nebraska and Wisconsin, maybe Stanford. Pitt is going to be good still. But Texas is still going to be as good as advertised next year. And I have to give a hat tip to Avid Volley on X. He kind of basically noted me of this. Maddie Belinovich, former Penn State libero, she is actually transferring from Penn State to Creighton for her final year of eligibility, as the Blue Jays need more experience at the libero position. If I recall correctly, their libero was a freshman, if not a sophomore. So now Creighton has a little bit more experience. And also Maddie Belinovich is a very good server, as she had the match-winning service ace against Kansas on the road in Kansas in that round of 32 match, which was big time right there. So I really think that Maddie Belinovich is going to do big time things for Creighton. Next up, we have Erica Levitt transferring from Tennessee to Georgia. So Georgia is going to be very promising next year. They return Casey Evans. Casey Evans, Sophie Fisher, and Erica Staunton are graduating. But Georgia returns Tori Harper, Cece Gooch, and Estelle Haugen in terms of their returning players. And that's big time right there. But wait, there's more. Later on. Actually, just kidding. I'll go to the transfer news right now. They didn't just land one player, former player from the SEC. They landed 2, as they got Biana Muaneke from Texas A&M, as Muaneke was third on the team in kills and digs from Texas A&M. And as I just mentioned, Georgia just added Erica Levitt, who joins Tori Harper, Cece Gooch, and Estelle Haugen. So Georgia is going to look pretty good next year. And I think they're going to be amongst some of the more underrated teams next year in terms of not only the SEC, but in terms of nationally all around. But I don't think they're going to beat Texas. Anyway, so back to your regularly scheduled transfer news. So next up we have Molly Phillips transferring from Texas to USC. However, it's going to be for beach volleyball and not for indoor volleyball. But it's still pretty good because she does have experience for playing beach volleyball, as Molly Phillips was part of Texas's inaugural beach volleyball team, and now she joins a paragon in terms of beach volleyball teams at the collegiate level, as the USC is the back-to-back-to-back national champion in beach volleyball. So her joining that team is going to be huge, and I really think that USC is going to contend for another beach volleyball crown. Next up, we have Angela Grieve, who transfers from Miami to Houston, and that is big for the Houston Cougars. Houston was in its first year as a Power 5 conference team, and they made a big splash. They even won an NCAA tournament match, and unfortunately, they proved me wrong in terms of my first-round lock. But getting Angela Grieve is so big for that team. They are going to get hit in terms of graduation quite a bit. But getting Angela Grieve, who was second in Miami in terms of kills, is so crucial right there because you need to have that next big offensive player right there. So getting Angela Grieve is a must. And I also got to give a huge shout out to Houston as, well, for starters, they actually went the entire season being ranked in the AVCA coaches poll. And that's huge just because they transferred from a non-Power 5 conference school or non-Power 5 conference to a Power 5 conference, which is big right there. Because remember, they went from Conference USA to Big 12, and they did that. They were ranked all season long, despite all their ups and downs. And then they also won NCAA tournament match, and they also pushed Stanford to 5, which I thought was incredible right there for the Houston Cougars. So for those Houston Cougars, you got to watch out for them next year. Next up, we have Caroline Juravicius. If I mispronounced that last name, I apologize. She is a former Nebraska player who is heading to Happy Valley as she has transferred to Penn State as she has 4 years left after redshirting for Nebraska this past year. So Penn State is going to get a lot of contribution, not just from her, but from Jess Mruzek, Taylor Trammell, and Cameron Hanna. So for Penn State, I think they're going to look very promising next season. And don't be surprised if Penn State is back in the Sweet 16, maybe in the Elite 8. But time will tell, as that's a big-time transfer for Penn State. I really think that they're going to have a lot to work with Caroline. And also, Caroline's father played for Penn State. I think he played basketball for them. Not entirely sure. It was either basketball or football, but I digress. Next up, we have Layla Ricks transferring from Maryland to Wake Forest. So Wake Forest was kind of that team where they were just floating around and challenging all these ACC teams and going 5 with a lot of these ACC teams. And for them landing Layla Ricks, that's kind of big right there. I think Layla Ricks is vastly underrated. She was a definite leader for Maryland. She actually was going to transfer last season, but then she said, nope, I'm staying right here in Maryland. Now she's officially transferring to Wake Forest. And I think that's big right there. I've seen her play back in her days at Redondo Union. So honestly, I really think that Wake Forest gets a lot in terms of depth for their team with Layla Ricks. Next up, we have Chelsea Thorpe transferring from the Ohio State to North Carolina. So she's a redshirt. She's going to be a redshirt sophomore next year, and she's an outside hitter / opposite. And she was second in kills on Ohio State with 232. So that is a nice feather in the Tar Heels' cap right there. And I really think that North Carolina can build off that. They weren't really the worst team, but they certainly weren't the best in the ACC, as they did have that great win over Duke, which prevented Duke from making the NCAA tournament, in my opinion. So honestly, I really think that getting Chelsea Thorpe is huge. Then a couple more transfers we have. We have Becca Kelly, who's going to be a redshirt freshman next year, as she is transferring from Oregon to TCU, as the Horned Frogs return Melanie Parra, Jalen Gibson, Lily Nicholson, Sarah Sylvester, and Cecily Bramschreiber, and possibly more players, as now they landed Becca Kelly, who is the sister of Bree Kelly. And that's a big-time get for the Horned Frogs, just because Bree Kelly, unfortunately, didn't play too much for Oregon, but now they get more depth in terms of not only their offense, but their team altogether. So I think TCU is going to be much better than last year. And with Texas leaving the conference, don't be surprised if they challenge their way for the Big 12 conference crown. And then lastly, we have London Giles, who's actually going to be playing beach volleyball. So I actually overlooked this, and it's actually going to be beach volleyball for Utah. She transfers from Northwest Nazarene. So I think that's still big right there, just because she was second in kills for Northwest Nazarene. And Utah isn't really the most known Pac-12 school in terms of beach volleyball, but honestly, I think for Utah, getting this is quite big as well. Is quite big for them. So I think they could build off this in terms of their beach team. So that's kind of all the notable transfers I have to go over. And I guess I should go over the Washington State, Oregon State news. So you all remember that I said Washington State and Oregon State are basically homeless in terms of no conference. Well, that's no longer, because last week it was announced that Washington State and Oregon State are going into the West Coast Conference for non-football and I think baseball for non-baseball and non-football conferences. So that includes women's volleyball, and that is huge for Washington State and Oregon State. And I had a feeling it was going to be one of those conferences. I had a feeling it was either going to be the West Coast Conference or the Big West Conference or the Mountain Pacific Conference or the Mountain West Conference, or it was either going to be the WAC as a Hail Mary. But going to the West Coast Conference is probably the best conference for them just because, well, in terms of women's volleyball, I think it's going to be big time just because Pepperdine didn't really have anyone that challenged them other than LMU and Pacific, which beat them. And then San Diego, I thought, was a massive took a massive dip from last year's team. But that's because they lost a lot to graduation. So all in all, Washington State and Oregon State joining the conference is big. And actually one person asked me about how does Oregon State stack up. Well, I'm going to be honest. Oregon State's going to have a tough time competing with the likes of maybe San Diego and Pepperdine and maybe LMU, maybe Pacific. But I think Oregon State is still scrappy. And if they can get some good notable players from the transfer portal, and if their up-and-coming class of 2023 steps up, or class of 2024 steps up, I think Oregon State can maybe rear its head into the NCAA tournament. But now there's going to be a Power 4 conference instead of a Power 5 conference, which is going to take some getting used to. But that is going to basically do it for that news. And I also talked about the Jen Greeny news. It sucks that I never got to meet Jen Greeny in person. She sounds like a sweetheart and a really nice person, as well as her husband Burdette. Maybe Burdette stays in Washington State and Jen goes off to West Virginia. But if I recall correctly, they've got kids, so that's going to be iffy right there. So we'll have to see what happens with Burdette. I wouldn't put it past anything of him going with Jen to West Virginia. But Washington State now has a void that needs to be filled for their head coach position. So we'll see what happens with the Cougars next season. A new conference, going to have a new head coach, a lot of new everything for Washington State. They had a fantastic season this year, but now it's going to be a whole new everything with new players and then new coaches probably, and then a new conference. So we'll see if Washington State can replicate what it did this past fall by making it to the Sweet 16. All right, but that is that for that NCAA women's volleyball news, as well as the notable transfer news. Before we head on out, this is the last the last show of 2023, the last set point you will be hearing until next year, aka next week. So set point accomplished quite a bit. For starters, I got to attend the Big West Conference men's and women's volleyball tournaments. That was definitely an accomplishment right there. The inaugural Big West Conference women's volleyball tournament, or the Big West Conference women's volleyball championships, as the vernacular wants to be called. But all in all, I enjoyed it, and I'm hoping to grow in terms of that. I really want to get like weekly interviews with like players and maybe coaches outside of like the podcast. If I can get them on the podcast, awesome. But having like weekly video interviews would be awesome with like players. Because if you all remember, the NCAA tournament, I had 2 interviews with Alan Knipe and Mark Pavlik, which I thought was really cool, obviously for the NCAA tournament. But also what kind of got in the way was my part-time job at the grocery store. But if I continue, but I would really love to have like an extra point segment or like extra points segment. So time will tell, but I accomplished quite a bit. I got to have a full NVA season of covering and writing for the NVA. I would like to grow upon that and maybe, hence the word maybe, take on a bigger role. Maybe run the NVA X account because, well, it hasn't tweeted out anything in over a year and a half, so that needs to change. So we'll see what happens, but unfortunately I never really got those NVA events that happened in December. But, well, it is what it is. I told y'all not to believe me and whatnot, but having that full NVA season was so big right there. And the tricky part is that unfortunately I couldn't attend all the matches because I had other commitments as well. But still recapping all of them was a thing right there. And having to attend every event despite me having to work at a grocery store, which that would require me taking Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. Oh man, that's brutal for a grocery store to have. But the fact that I got through that and maintained a part-time job at the grocery store is quite amazing. So honestly, I'm happy that I completed my first full season with the NVA and not just watching them on like a live stream. Because watching them on a live stream is one thing, but watching them in person is a whole other thing. And that's the thing. Some of the NVA guys said, well, you could just watch remotely and you don't have to attend. But you need to have that feel. You need to have that quote from that coach or quote from that player. So I really think that, honestly, being there in person is going to be big. Like, I am an in-person type of guy. I really want to attend events in person. So that's the thing right there. And lastly, what's next for Set Point? Well, like I said, I want to have like weekly interviews with like players and coaches. But I also will be attending the First Point Collegiate Challenge. Now, I'm still trying to wonder where in Jupiter's Jingle Chute do I go to fill out an application for a media pass. I really want to go as a member of the media because even though if I have to pay, I have to pay in terms of tickets. But I really want to interview all these coaches and players because I rarely get to see Stanford, I rarely get to see Ohio State, I rarely get to see Penn State, and I rarely get to see Ball State. The only times I get to see those teams, as well as SC and UCLA, is when they play Long Beach State or when they play UC Irvine. Or, heaven forbid, if I have enough time, is if they play Concordia Irvine, which I rarely get to see as well. So, if I have to pay for a ticket, I have to pay for a ticket, but I would just love to interview the coaches and players afterward. That is my big thing right there. And if they don't have media passes, then that's when I'll purchase the ticket. But I would really like to know if they have media passes. I checked their website, but nothing. But I digress. And then another big thing for Set Point is, hopefully, hence the word hopefully, I will be able to attend the NCAA men's volleyball tournament. And this is the entire tournament, not just the national championship match, but the entire tournament. The first round, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the final. All those matches. I want to attend all those matches because that will be my first ever NCAA tournament I'm attending in terms of any sport. And also, why not attend the NCAA tournament at my alma mater? Yes, I understand that's being a little homerish, but honestly, having the NCAA men's volleyball tournament at Long Beach State is so big right there, and I think it's amazing. And then 2 more years it's going to be at UCLA, with next year being at Ohio State. So, honestly, I really am looking forward to. As Adam Clark pops in the chat room, he says, Happy holidays, Teran. Happy holidays to you too, Adam. And he says, work with your hustle. You won't need to be buying tickets for long. Facts. And I just got to keep putting my head down and basically keep on the grind. And I feel that again, there's still going to be me trying to expand my horizons in terms of growing Set Point, but it's just going to have to be a time will tell process, and who knows? The only thing that's maybe stopping me in terms of attending the NCAA men's volleyball tournament is if the NCAA says, oh, your Long Beach State media pass isn't going to work for you here. So, but time will tell. I have connections with Long Beach State, so maybe I could pull some strings to get in. But I enjoyed all of 2023. I really am going to hit the ground running in terms of getting Set Point really grown and blown up for 2024. Because I want to be the volleyball podcast altogether. So we'll see what happens, but I'm very confident in myself that I can continue to be consistent in terms of possibly getting guests. But I should also mention that I'm going to be in the Dallas, Texas area visiting my brother, as well as eventually visiting Austin for the First Point Collegiate Challenge. So Set Point's time is going to have to be moved. So I imagine it might be moved to like maybe 3 p.m. Pacific time, which would be 5 p.m. Dallas-Fort Worth time. But so in case you're wondering why am I on this time instead of my previous time, that's why. So just got to give that fair warning to all my listeners out there. But on that note, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. And by the way, me visiting Dallas-Fort Worth is just temporary. It's not going to be permanent. It's just going to be for like a month. And maybe a month, maybe a little bit more than a month. But Time will tell. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the last time this year to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to the live chat room, Adam Karnick, Larry B, Cale Henderson, Mike Pat, and Jen B for popping in. I really do appreciate everybody that tuned in live or on the playback. Also, thank you to all my friends of the show for all of your support. Thank you for all your comments and for everything. Thank you for all your heads ups and tips and whatnot. It really means the world to me, because without you, I don't know where I would be with Set Point. There will be a show back on its normal time next Monday, but it will be at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern, or any time that is dependent on when I'm free and whatnot. But it's a time will tell process. But for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the week. Happy New Year, everybody, and happy belated holidays to everybody. I will see you all next week for the first day of Set Point. Yes, I plan to go live on New Year's Day, and what better way to go live than on the first new day. Hopefully I'll be having guests on the show, if not maybe guests on a weekly thing, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But have a great rest of the week, Happy New Year, and I will see you this Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!